Chapter 3 of The People of the Crater by Andre Norton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 3. Garin Hears of the Black Ones. Erg brought the flyer into one of the bubble-shaped rooms which contained a low cushioned bench facing a metal screen, and here they seated themselves. What followed was a language lesson. On the screen appeared objects which Erg would name, to have his sibilant uttering repeated by Garin. As the American later learned, the ray treatment he had undergone had quickened his mental powers, and in an incredibly short time he had a working vocabulary. Judging by the pictures, the lizard folk were the rulers of the crater world, although there were other forms of life there. The elephant-like Tand was a beast of burden. The squirrel-like Iron lived underground and carried on a crude agriculture in small clearings, coming shyly twice a year to exchange grain for a liquid rubber produced by the folk. Then there was the Gibby, a monstrous bee, also friendly to the lizard people. It supplied the cavern dwellers with wax, and in return the folk gave the Gibby colonies shelter during the unhealthy times of the great mists. Highly civilized were the folk. They did no work by hand, except the finer kinds of jewel setting and carving. Machines wove their metal cloth, machines prepared their food, harvested their fields, hollowed out new dwellings. Freed from manual labor, they had turned to acquiring knowledge. Erg projected on the screen pictures of vast laboratories and great libraries of scientific lore. But all they knew in the beginning they had learned from the Ancient Ones, a race unlike themselves, which had preceded them in sovereignty over Tav. Even the folk themselves were the result of constant forced evolution and experimentation carried on by these Ancient Ones. All this wisdom was guarded most carefully, but against what or whom Erg could not tell, although he insisted that the danger was very real. There was something within the blue wall of the crater which disputed the folk's rule. As Garin tried to probe further, a gong sounded. Erg arose. "It is the hour of eating," he announced. "Let us go." They came to a large room where a heavy table of white stone stretched along 3 walls, benches before it. Erg seated himself and pressed a knob on the table, motioning Garin to do likewise. The wall facing them opened and 2 trays slid out. There was a platter of hot meat covered with rich sauce, a stone bowl of grain porridge, and a cluster of fruit still fastened to a leafy branch. This the Ana eyed so wistfully that Garin gave it to the creature. The folk ate silently and arose quietly when they had finished, their trays vanishing back through the wall. Garin noticed only males in the room, and recalled that he had as yet seen no females among the folk. He ventured a question. Erg chuckled. "So you think there are no women in the caverns? Well, we shall go to the Hall of Women that you may see." To the Hall of Women they went. It was breathtaking in its richness. Stones worth a nation's ransom sparkled from its domed roof and painted walls. Here were the matrons and maidens of the folk, their black forms veiled in robes of silver net, each crossed strand of which was set with a tiny gem, so that they appeared to be wrapped in glittering scales. There were not many of them, 100 perhaps, and a few led by the hand smaller editions of themselves, who stared at Garin with round yellow eyes and chewed black fingertips shyly. The women were entrusted with the finest jewel work, and with pride they showed the stranger their handiwork. At the far end of the hall was a wondrous thing in the making. One of the silver nets, which were the foundations of their robes, was fastened there, and 3 of the women were putting small rose jewels into each microscopic setting. Here and there they had varied the pattern with tiny emeralds of flaming opals, so that the finished portion was a rainbow. One of the workers smoothed the robe and glanced up at Garin, a gentle teasing in her voice as she explained, "This is for the daughter when she comes to her throne." The daughter! What had the lord of the folk said? This youth is fit to mate with the daughter. But Urg had said that the Ancient Ones had gone from Tav. Who is the daughter? He demanded. Thrala of the Light. Where is she? The woman shivered, and there was fear in her eyes. Thrala lies in the caves of darkness. The caves of darkness? Did she mean Thrala was dead? Was he, Garin Featherstone, to be the victim of some rite of sacrifice which was designed to unite him with the dead? Urg touched his arm. Not so. Thrala has not yet entered the place of ancestors. You know my thoughts? Urg laughed. Thoughts are easy to read. Thrala lives. Sarah served the daughter as handmaiden while she was yet among us. Sarah, do you show us Thrala as she was? The woman crossed to a wall where there was a mirror such as Urg had used for his language lesson. She gazed into it, and then beckoned the flyer to stand beside her. The mirror misted, and then he was looking as if through a window into a room with walls and ceiling of rose quartz. On the floor were thick rugs of silver rose, and a great heap of cushions made a low couch in the center. The inner chamber of the daughter, Sarah announced. A circular panel in the wall opened, and a woman slipped through. She was very young, little more than a girl. There were happy curves in her full crimson lips, joyous lights in her violet eyes. She was human of shape, but her beauty was unearthly. Her skin was pearl white, and other colors seemed to play faintly upon it, so that it reminded Garin of mother of pearl with its lights and shadows. The hair, which veiled her in a cloud, was blue-black and reached below her knees. She was robed in the silver net of the folk, and there was a heavy girdle of rose-shaped jewels about her slender waist. That was Thrala before the Black Ones took her, said Sarah. Garin uttered a cry of disappointment as the picture vanished. Urg laughed. What care you for shadows when the daughter herself waits for you? You have but to bring her from the caves of darkness. Where are these caves? Garin's question was interrupted by the pealing of the cavern gong. Sarah cried out, The Black Ones! Urg shrugged. When they spared not the Ancient Ones, how could we hope to escape? Come, we must go to the Hall of Thrones. Before the jade throne of the Lord of the Folk stood a small group of lizard men beside two litters. As Garin entered, the Lord spoke. Let the Outlander come hither, that he may see the work of the Black Ones. Garin advanced unwillingly, coming to stand by those struggling things which gasped their message between moans and screams of agony. They were men of the folk, but their black skins were green with rot. The Lord leaned forward on his throne. It is well, he said. You may depart. As if obeying his command, the tortured things let go of the life to which they had clung, and were still. Look upon the work of the Black Ones, the ruler said to Garin. Jiv and Betva were captured while on a mission to the Gibbey of the cliff. It seems that the Black Ones needed material for their laboratories. They seek even to give the daughter to their workers of horror. A terrible cry of hatred arose from the hall, and Garin's jaw set. To give that fair vision he had just seen to such a death as this? Jiv and Betva were imprisoned close to the daughter, and they heard the threats of Kepta. Our brothers, stricken with foul disease, were sent forth to carry the plague to us, but they swam through the pool of boiling mud. They have died, but the evil died with them. And I think that while we breed such as they, the Black Ones shall not rest easy. Listen now, Outlander, to the story of the Black Ones and the caves of darkness, of how the Ancient Ones brought the folk up from the slime of a long-dried sea and made them great, and of how the Ancient Ones at last went down to their destruction. End of Chapter 3.